Hey, Nigerian ex-JW Speaks here, otherwise known as Trigger. I hope you are doing well. Happy, morning, afternoon, evening, whenever you are watching this. I hope you're doing well. Got my glasses on today. I'm feeling extra serious and extra, what's the word I'm looking for? Studious? Should we go with that? Yeah, let's go with that. Professorial, if that is a word. But I'm keeping it on today. So I'm not going to do too much intro. If it's your first time here, hi, hello, welcome. Lovely to see you. I am a former Jehovah's Witness from Nigeria, currently living in the UK. I started this channel to share my experiences, the story of my living the religion, and since then I've been sort of documenting that, talking about doctrine, the things that were troubling, etc., and sometimes a bit of current affairs, which is this particular video is sort of a combination of both. That's what I want to talk about today. So if you like the video, do give it a thumbs up and also subscribe as well, so you know when I upload more videos. I try and get one out at least once a week. We are doing okay with that so far, one a week. So jumping straight in, if you have not been living under a rock, then you know what happened in the US this week. So I believe that was on the 6th, where supporters of the current president decided to storm their Capitol building. And, they were ready to take it back. They were ready to take the election that they believe was stolen from them. And unfortunately, during that process, lives have been lost. I think as at when I'm filming this, there are 6 people in total that have been reported dead. 2 of those were police officers. So one of them directly from injuries, and the other one, I think he took his own life. Maybe today that just came out. So lives have been lost because of this. And the fallout from that is still ongoing. This is not what I'm here to talk about, or my political views. I mean, I am not in the US anyway, so whatever I think or don't think, it doesn't really matter. So this is not what this is for, but trust me, I do have them. I do have political views. Hold on, I have something behind me that's just, my chair is banging into it. Okay, let me move forward a bit. Okay, excellent. But what I wanted to take off the back of that was that got me thinking about the place where people get to, where they're willing to die for their leadership. That's what I'm going to call it. They saw him, Donald Trump, as a leader, and they were willing to take whatever risk needed to be taken to show their support for him, to show that they were fully on the team. And so it got me thinking about the witness faith and the different instances where the members either put their lives at risk, either directly or indirectly, based on what the leadership has said. And the leadership being the men in New York who call themselves the governing body, based on what they direct the publishing team to publish. People are willing to die for it. And so I've put down, I believe it is 7 different cases where people have died and continue to be willing to die to do what the governing body says. So I am going to run through those. I'm not sure I have any particular order, but we'll just run through it. So starting from, I guess, what you would call, let's start from here. Organ transplants. So if you don't know the history, organ transplants used to be something that witnesses were not allowed to take. Now, I have a video that I went through this in a lot of detail. I will try and link that here. But I want to say early 1900s, organ transplant is something witnesses were not allowed to take. It was considered in the same category as blood transfusion. It was seen as cannibalism. And so witnesses were not allowed to take organ transplants. Now, they later changed their mind and flip-flopped, as they do with a lot of things, and now you're allowed to take them. But of course, anybody who was a witness before the policy changed that needed one and didn't take one because the governing body said not to, their lives would have been lost. And they would have shown their willingness to give up their lives to adhere to this policy, especially something that isn't mentioned in the Bible. The fact that they've been able to flip-flop, that's an acknowledgement that that is not something that they got from any divine source, but lives have been lost, and that's that. The next one that sort of follows on from that is their blood policy, which they're still having in effect now. But again, there has been a lot of flip-flopping with that. Again, that video that I referenced, I'm going to link that here, like I said, so that you can go check that out yourself. So with your blood policy, it's changed so many times. First you couldn't, then you could, then you couldn't, then you could, then you could take some, but not all of it. It's been a whole mess. But again, lives have been lost because of this policy and continue to be. In fact, they had an Awake article, I believe this was in the 1980s, a whole segment of an Awake dedicated to celebrating children who had lost their lives because both them and their parents were willing to sacrifice their lives for their leadership. Because again, they are supposedly interpreting this from a text that was written when blood transfusions was not a thing and could not possibly be referring to that. But lives have been lost and people were willing to do that. Even in more recent years, there was a convention where Anthony Morris, one of the governing body members, was relating this story about a boy who had refused a blood transfusion and had lost his life. He called him a very fine fella, something to that effect, and the audience applauded. They applauded the fact that a child had died, refusing to accept a blood transfusion, simply following the rule, the dictates of their leader. This continues to happen. Just last month, I talked about a case here in the UK where a judge had to essentially make a 15-year-old accept treatment that she needed to live, overruling what she was saying from a faith perspective. So this is real, direct. People's lives are at stake because they are following the rules of their leader. Point number 3, I've put down conscientious objection, especially to do with warfare and the military. So I am going to preempt this, first of all, by saying I am all for someone wanting to be a conscientious objector. I am not a fan of war myself, especially because a lot of the time, the people that have literally putting their lives on the line, whatever it's been fought about is nothing to do with them. It's power struggle for the leadership. So I am not a fan of war. And if somebody on their own decides that they don't want to do that, good for them. All for that. What I'm talking about here is when people are not making that choice for themselves, they are deciding that based on what their leadership has told them to do. If we think back to, the different world wars and sort of beyond that, in countries where you have governments that do not recognize the autonomy of people who choose not to go to war, you have witnesses being made to essentially risk their lives by saying no, not because they want to, but because their leadership has told them to. Now, even worse than that, you have cases where governments have, recognized that some people do not want to go to war, but there's some sort of service that needs to be done. Like, my country is one of those, although it's not necessarily in the military, but there are countries where people are expected to do a year or however long of military service, sort of mandatory. For people who do not want to be involved in combat or anything like that, they have an option to serve in a capacity that they're not, getting involved in war at all. So I can't think of one. I think one of the places that had a change in policy recently, I want to say Japan, but I could be wrong. I will put the correct country name on the screen. So when they even have that option, sometimes the leadership is not letting them take that. Just doing some sort of service that doesn't involve them going into war, doesn't involve them harming anyone, just part of their civic duty. They're not allowed to do that. Something again that comes to mind, which I think just a horrific example. Again, I have a video on this. I'll try and link that here. But the incident with witnesses in Malawi, where they were required to have a card which showed them, that the government needed them to have to identify as a member, as part of the political party. Now, in that particular instance, I believe it was a one-party state anyway. So it's the equivalent of having a passport. It's not like there was something else that it could be. So it's just having a card to identify them as being part of whatever the only option was anyway. And witnesses were forbidden from doing that. And for that reason, they were tortured, they were killed. I'm not going to go into the gruesome detail of all of it here. But again, that was people being expected to sacrifice their lives for the sake of a card. And the hypocrisy of it all becomes evident where we had a similar case in Mexico. Witnesses in Mexico were required to carry a similar sort of card, and the witnesses there were allowed to do that. I'm not going into, like I said, a lot of detail here, but this is yet another scenario where their members are expected to lay down their lives or be willing to lay down their lives to fulfill the wishes of their leader. The other one I put down is traveling to unsafe war-torn areas. So this happens time and time again. But one that comes to mind for me specifically is actually from a recent JW Broadcasting episode. We'll see if I can find it. But essentially you have someone who was out in the door-to-door service and in a place that was very unsafe, very unsafe. Ordinarily, they would not be going there. They ended up being hit by a bullet while they were out there. And the experience that was being narrated was that the person's parent was now going out door to door in that same territory. Now, this is just a recent example, but when you have the pressure to preach, and this is something that I talk about over and over again, the onus that's put on witnesses to feel like if they're not putting in the time, their lives are at stake, even if they're good persons on their own, if they're not going out to warn people. Of course, it's different now with COVID, but they feel that their lives are at stake if they don't do that. And so they're willing to risk themselves, put themselves in situations that are sometimes unsafe to meet the whims of their leader. Now, granted, people have a choice with this one. You know, you're not forced to do this, but this is part of what happens. This is part of what happens in the task to preach the good news, and lives have been lost, and people continue to do that, to put themselves like this, because after all, paradise. If I die now, I'm going to be resurrected, which is the underlying thing with all of this anyway. With everything that I've talked about, it's all hinging on the fact that they believe that this life right here is nothing. There is an everlasting life that they're going to have. And so it doesn't matter if they die here before they need to, or necessarily pointlessly as children when they don't need to, they have everlasting life coming. They believe what they've been told, that they're going to be resurrected and they're going to live forever. I don't want to burst anybody's bubble. I'm not coming for general Christianity, but here's the thing. The people that are promising them that, they have absolutely no way. They have absolutely no way of guaranteeing that that is the case. What we've got now, that's what we know. No one's gone and come back and say, right, I can verify all of this. This is what we know, but all of this willingness to risk their lives, it's all hinging on the fact that they've been promised a life after this one. And so they're willing to risk everything for their leader. The next one is, so it's more of an indirect one. So forfeiting careers and getting themselves the type of employment that will build a legacy, that will create the kind of financial security. And I'm not talking of being wealthy, but being in a position where you have enough, where you're not just living hand to mouth. We make jokes about window cleaners and things like that, but that's the sort of culture where you're being pressured to have everything so simple. You're being pressured to just get what you need to get by. And so people are not laying the foundations where when unexpected things come up, life is so unpredictable. You don't know when someone's going to fall ill, when natural disaster might happen, when you might just need to be able to tap into something, or heck, being able to leave something for your loved ones. You know, so while that's not directly killing you straight away, it all adds up. When you're in that state of just making enough to get by, when something unexpected comes up and you're in a country where you need to pay for healthcare up front, like in the one that I come from, There's no national health service like I have here. You know, when you show up at the hospital, you better have the money before they start treating you. And so if you've put yourself in that position where you literally were just getting by hand to mouth, something unexpected happens with your health, that's it. That is a risk. That is a risk that the members take with their lives and their children's lives and their children's futures when they follow the direction of the dear leaders to make just enough to get by and nothing more, because you're keeping your eyes simple, because again, this life is nothing. It's the next one that matters, where everything's going to be great. The next one from that is not getting professional support with CSA, child abuse, if I can say that here. Time and time again, including what they are going through right now in Australia with the redress scheme, with, you know, the way they handle it completely. Members who experience this within the church, within the religion, and the culture of not having them speak up to get help, the culture of handling it in-house with men who are not trained, not qualified in any way to deal with this, to handle this, to talk about this. They have zero qualification. They're totally unqualified. But with the attitude of keeping it in-house, because here's the thing, once you talk to a professional, they have a duty of care to notify the authorities. And so to keep it in-house, people are not getting professional help. And I dread to think the number of people who end up taking their own lives because it just wasn't dealt with, because it just wasn't coped with. Speaking from experience, you gotta talk with someone who knows, someone who's trained to help you process stuff like this. And because their members are not encouraged to do that, it was only recently that they changed their policy where they're not discouraged from doing that. But previously there was an active push to keep it in-house. And lives have been lost because people could not get the professional help that they needed to get through something like this. I think about the Leah Remini documentary from a couple of years ago now. One of the women there, I mean, of course, there was a lot of stories, but sort of jumping off of that to my last point, which is about mental health in general. One of the women was talking about her mom, who suffered from depression for years and years and years. And she kept going to the elders, and they were just asking her to do more meetings, more prayer, more Bible study. She just needed more. And she wasn't getting it. She was an elder's wife who's supposed to be this person who had everything together, rather than being able to get the professional help that she needed. If she needed to go on medication, if she needed to go on to have some sort of therapy or counseling, she just didn't feel like she was able to. Now, I am not fully clued up on what the current policies are. Somebody correct me. But in general, again, we have a culture of things being handled in-house. You are Jehovah's happy people. Why are you not happy? You know, someone who is suffering from mental health challenges, you know, it's almost like there's something wrong with you. And you are under this pressure to keep a happy facade, and there's a distrust for professionals in this field. And again, I think of lives that would have been lost because of this sort of culture where people don't feel like they can get the help that they need. So those are just some instances that I put together of cases where witnesses have been willing to die for the policies of their leadership. It's crazy when you think about it, how much this happens. Even panning out just a little bit beyond the witness faith, we know of Jim Jones and the people that died with him following their leadership. We have so many groups that I'm drawing a blank on some of them now. I will put a list. I'm picturing in my head this guy with the crazy eyes. I can't remember what the group is called now, but just cases and cases of people being willing to die for their leadership. So it's scary to me how sometimes as humans, we are incredibly smart, incredibly brilliant, and then sometimes we lose a sense of rationality. It's like something goes off. And so as people who may have come out of a cult or making our way out, I just want to finish with a PSA, like a little message, because this really got me thinking. Like, it's important to keep rationality. It's important to keep critical thinking. It's important to hear all sides and then step away and go and think about it. And if there's anything in your life right now that you're so fanatic about, that you're willing to stake your life for, a person, not, because let's face it, you know what parents are like. We'll do anything for our kids. We'll rather have harm come to us than to them. I'm not talking about that. We're talking about people that we become followers of, people that we start to revere in such high esteem that we're willing to give our lives. It's easy to think that can't happen to me, but it's happened to so many people. It's happened so many times in history where it's not a fluke, and it's happening right now. It happened this week. People are willing to put their lives on the line, directly, indirectly. They're willing to go with it right down to the very end for not very good reasons. So I want to hear your thoughts, but it's really scary how the mind can be made to just, absorb things and put itself on the line like that. I'm going to stop rambling now. I want to hear your thoughts. I want to know, what other things would you add to this? Is there anything that I've missed? By all means, let me know. If you have a different opinion, let's have a discussion. Let us talk about it. If you are in the US, as I know some of you are, or most of you are, I hope you're staying safe. I hear the next couple of weeks are going to be interesting. Okay, my camera cut me off before I finished. I'll have to go make some space in this phone. But yes, please do stay safe, and I hope you stay well, stay healthy. If you have watched up until this point and you haven't subscribed, why not? Give it a thumbs up as well, like I said at the start. And I'll put some videos on here for you to watch next. Why not, if you are sticking around? And I will speak to you on the next one. Take care.